for Reverend Flad. I'm just wondering if that is also the stance of the United Church of Christ in general, or if this is your particular congregation, your particular chapter.
The United Church of Christ, and after Reverend Kennedy spoke, I realized that I probably ought to have pointed this out as well. The United Church of Christ has an interesting structure in that the United Church of Christ does not speak for its congregations, it speaks to its congregations. And so every 2 years we have a general synod that makes proclamations that's wholly and completely democratic. And so every geographic area sends people together to vote and to make these proclamations. But then it is up to individual congregations to determine whether or not they're going to adhere to those proclamations or not. Because of this whole thing about conscience. And so the United Church of Christ, the national church has made proclamations about reproductive freedom for the last 32 years. But each individual church will, and each person within each individual church will really determine what it is that they believe is moral and right. Clear as mud, right?
Any other questions for our first two speakers?
I had a question for Reverend Fred as well. You said that your church is based off of pilgrims and that they moved over here, but the pilgrims themselves definitely would not agree with sexual freedom and reproductive freedom.
Right.
So where does that fit in?
That is something that has confounded folks, I think, for a long time. How it is that the United Church of Christ, which is a very progressive denomination in this day and age, could have its roots in the Pilgrims and the Congregationalists. Really, it's because of this strong adherence to conscience that over time the denomination, and some wouldn't even call it a denomination, would call it a movement, that this movement has been grown more and more progressive. Really and truly, though, it's not that we're advocating for sexual freedom, we're advocating for conscience. And because of that, there's a very large umbrella under which really anyone can fit.
For Reverend Kennedy, when you said it's like 17,000 to like 4 or 5, now down to 4 or 5 women are dying a year of botched abortion, is that in like clinics, or is that in like all recorded cases of women having attempted abortion?
You know, I honestly don't know the details. This is a statistic that I came by, and I don't honestly know. It's probably an estimate of some sort. I don't know.
Any other questions for these two?
Well, hello, everybody. It's not quantity, it's quality. If my thoughts are a little bit all over the place, I actually was brought in to speak in place of someone, and I was informed last night. So,
Oh, God.
so I am going to be a little bit all over the place. I think it's interesting. I think one of the things that I was really thrilled about being part of this panel is that I knew that there was going to be a variety, really, probably, of opinions. And I think that as a representative of the Muslim community, I think the Muslims probably fall kind of like in the middle on this particular debate. As Muslims, we believe that really God created males and females from a single soul. It doesn't say that we were created from a man. We don't believe that God is a man or looks like a man. We believe that God is neither male nor female. And we believe that Islam is very egalitarian towards both men and women, and the Quranic injunctions and rulings have been very egalitarian in the way it looks at both men and women. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that all Muslims practice that way, and sometimes culture trumps religion, and I don't think that that's unusual to anyone here. So sometimes when you see certain practices in certain parts of the world, it's usually culture that is trumping religion. But what I'm here today really to talk about is not really my personal view, and not even the view of the congregation that I attend, but I think probably the most common view amongst Muslim scholars and what is presented. Now, having said that, you will find still within the Muslim community those that will consider abortion absolutely unacceptable, and then you will have the other end, that those that think that abortion is fine. But for the most part, if I'm talking about what most of the overwhelming Muslim scholars will say, is that first of all, when we talk, and it's interesting because when we're talking about abortion, and particularly as an interfaith panel, and we're talking about reproductive rights, each one is kind of being informed through their particular faith. And so we're speaking from that. If we didn't necessarily believe what our faith endorsed, there are thousands of other religions that we can ascribe to. We don't need to remain part of that faith. But the way that Islam really takes a look at the issue of reproductive rights, now having come like 1400 years ago, there is nowhere in the Quran that I can find reproductive rights. That's a very modern term, and so we have to sort of take it from an understanding. What does the Quran and what does God tell us about life in general? In general, the first and foremost goal of Sharia, that real scary term that some of these people keep using, that scary term Sharia, the first and foremost goal of Sharia is the preservation of life. And so it is important to preserve life in whatever way possible. Amongst also the goals of Sharia are human rights. And women's rights also come under human rights. So when we talk about preserving life and also having and preserving the rights of women, for 1400 years, Islam and Sharia has endorsed family planning. So family planning is absolutely allowable in Islam. There has never been an issue with the use of family planning, with the use of contraception. In fact, we have traditions of the Prophet that encourage people to space out their children. And at that time, what was family planning? It was by nursing your child and encouraging them to nurse their children for at least 2 years as a form of family planning. So we're talking 1400 years ago. And so that was present even at that time. For Muslims, we believe that, first of all, there is biological life that starts at the moment of fertilization. But as Muslims, we believe that the infusion of the soul really takes place at 6 weeks gestation, and then that the fetus reaches full personhood at 120 days. And so even if there is a spontaneous abortion, which is like a miscarriage, after 120 days, according to Muslim tradition, a burial is required because that person has reached personhood. So what does that mean to us, and what have scholars basically come up with by the idea that the infusion of the soul takes place at 6 weeks? So this then does allow for abortion, not really, we don't look look at abortion as something that simply because we want an abortion, which is the view that maybe some particular traditions and individuals may have, that just because we as individuals want an abortion, that that's sufficient to have an abortion, because as Muslims we believe that we don't really own our life. And so that makes a difference in how we approach it. But knowing that the infusion of the soul takes place at 6 weeks, and personhood, full personhood, is reached after 120 days, this allows us to know that in cases of rape or incest, that abortion or treatment can take place. This is allowable because this now comes under the human rights, the woman's rights. We know that if the life of the mother at stake is at risk, the life of the mother, even to the very last moment before that child is born, the life of the mother takes precedence over the life of the fetus or the baby. And the other thing that I always worry about when we talk about the issue of abortion, and this is one of the things that actually Islam always warns us about. This is why, as Muslims, for example, if a person was going to donate an organ, donate a kidney or something like that, it is forbidden that it ever be part of a financial transaction. And so the reason for that is because then we would have all the poor people of the world walking around with one kidney. Yeah. And so with the same idea, when we talk about abortion, and these are the kind of justifications that our scholars have presented based on really their understanding of what the laws of Islam and the Sharia of Islam is. That the concern also with having, abortion at any time is the idea that then it may be just the poor people, poor women, that are the ones that end up having these abortions because they are unable to take care of their children, for example. And so one of the requirements, and one of, in fact, the statements within the Quran is that don't kill your children for fear of want, because God will provide. And so this is one of the things that we have to keep in mind. And so the idea that for, let's say, some destitute woman to want to resort to an abortion because of the reason that she fears that she's not able to feed that, from the Muslim perspective, that's something that becomes a responsibility of the community to make sure that that does not take place. If she can take care of that child, if she's mentally able and physically able to take care of the child, and the reason that she wants to abort that child is for fear of want, then that becomes really kind of a crime or a responsibility on the rest of the community for not having resolved her financial situation, so she wouldn't be making that decision out of want and fear of want. It's interesting because people often see Muslims as conservative, but you'd be very surprised. We actually have very liberal stands on a lot of issues. I sometimes sit on panels where I have individual, and I like you guys so much more, let me tell you, where I sit on panels where we have people that kind of take a very, very far right position on everything, and they say, well, we know that Muslims in general don't endorse abortion, so why don't you guys say something about it? I said, because first of all, I have a big problem with the fact that you're so militant against abortion, but you have no problem launching wars against people that are walking and talking and speaking, So to me, it just, that whole thing to me is rather hypocritical. So I just, that's something I just wanted to kind of put out there. One of the things that I also want to say is that as Muslims, because this is not a Muslim country, if it was a Muslim country, then these would be generally the rules. The rules are that if it's a case of rape or incest, or the life of the mother is at risk, or the child, for example, it has a fatal illness, then abortion would be allowable. Other than that, then it becomes a responsibility of the community and the families to really help resolve whatever issues the person is going through in order for them to help them to take care of that child. And I think one of the differences that you would find in predominantly Muslim countries is that there's extended family type of situations, and so you always have, it's not so much an individualistic kind of lifestyle, so that really helps in raising a child when you know you have that extended family always present. And so that resolves a lot of the stress that sometimes mothers really would encounter having to raise a child, particularly if it's a single mother. So as a Muslim living in a wonderful democracy, we need to uphold that democracy. And so what does that mean to me as a Muslim? It means to me that I should endorse the right of women for the following reasons. First of all, because I believe that in order to preserve the life of the mother, there are situations to preserve the life of the mother. Also in cases, again, of rape or incest, this is also, you know, nobody's saying that if a person is raped and decides to carry the child, they can't do that, but they should have an option, because sometimes the harm to the individual and their mental status is much more than it would be. Some people maybe can handle it, some people cannot. The third, as an individual living in a democracy, is a recognition that there are a variety of different faiths and a variety of different groups that have a variety of different understandings. And this is what I always say to panelists that I sit with from the very staunch Christian right, is that why do you want to impose your understanding of when life starts upon me? Would you like me to impose my understanding upon you? And so there has to be an understanding that each faith needs to have the right to be able to practice as they understand it, and no one's coming to the next person and saying you have to do it this way, but each person has to have that right to say that, okay, I believe in this faith, and so this faith informs how I approach this particular issue. You know, also the situation, if there is a lethal condition in the fetus, then it becomes important. Why should the mother have to continue to carry this fetus when she knows that this fetus is not going to survive? It just becomes more stressful upon her. And so these are my thoughts. I'm sorry if they were all over the place, but I will look forward to your questions.